We're talking about evaluating a site. If I go to a job site to look at a job, I don't want to go back unless I have the job. I only want to go there once. So the first thing I'm going to find out is, what is the goal? What does the owner want you to do? They want you to remove the house. Okay, I'll remove the house. I'll bid on removing the house. Well, and I say, wait a minute, is there anything else you want removed? What about that fence? Oh yeah, I want you to do the house and the fence. And I'm like, okay, and that garage stays, right? No, I want you to do the house and the fence and the garage. It's like, if you don't ask, then they don't seem to get it. Like if that's a big difference than just doing the house. And so you have to find out why you're there, and you also have to find out, as I'm finding out, which is a challenge right here, is like salvage and recycling potential. Like, I have to take that house, fence, and garage down, and I have to get rid of all of it. I can't just leave some of it that I don't want. I have to take it all away. And where almost everywhere in North America, you have to pay to get rid of things. And so that means if you save things that are reusable and you sell them, that's good, you made money. But if you have other materials that you have to pay to get rid of, that's bad. And demolition, in almost everywhere else, it costs a lot of money to dispose of things, and you can save money by recycling things. And here it's a different equation, I guess, because recycling things doesn't actually save you money here. So that's interesting, because it doesn't cost anything to throw stuff away. It does cost to haul things away, like to physically haul them, but it doesn't cost things. It doesn't cost you at the landfill. You don't have to pay. So, but I'm evaluating the method of deconstruction. Like, how am I going to do it? Am I going to use a machine to do something, or am I going to just use people? Or how many people? And dumpsters and things like that. I'm trying to figure out those kind of things. And logistical hurdles, yeah, it's on a hill, and there's only a path to get to it. That's difficult, or it's on St. John, and there's no landfill in St. John, right? So there's a logistical hurdle. So safety hazards. Well, y'all have been talking about some of the safety that you're dealing with, construction safety, but there's a lot of safety hazards to doing this. But there is for demolition too. It's just that we have people in the building doing the work, not machines that are outside the building destroying the building. So we have to think about that. But also, what's a big example? After the hurricanes, right? There must have been safety hazards like every square inch of this island, of all three of these islands. It would be like, all of the buildings were a safety hazard. This roof was falling in. That wall was ready to tip over. There were boards with nails everywhere. Sharp pieces of metal, broken glass. Oh my goodness. And so that's something I can relate to, because when there is a damaged building that I get asked to take down, we have to take it down, whether it's unsafe or not. And we have to kind of work our way in and figure out what's the safe way to do that. So when I assess a building, I'm looking at, is this a safe place to be in the first place? So, but the other thing is, I need to get all the information that I need for my bid, because remember, I'm looking at a building and then I'm going back to the office to bid on that building. And I don't want to have to come back, and I don't really want to have to call the owner again. I'd rather just get all that information while I'm there. So here's a building. This is on St. John. Typical scenario, right? You've got a steep slope, you've got a little driveway, and you've got a bunch of vegetation that isn't being taken out. They're not cutting all the trees down. A machine, like if you were an excavator, you could create your own road, couldn't you? You could just build a road, I guess, and you could sit in one spot and you could do a lot of your work. But we come in and we're the guys that don't destroy things, right? We're the ones that come in with a light touch. So so we often kind of have some limitations, and we don't want to. So this slide is really about a challenge and an opportunity. So the idea of the steep slope it can be a real challenge, because you're like, I don't have anywhere to park. I don't have anywhere to put a dumpster. I can't, create a stack of lumber and pick it up later, because it's really hard to do that. So, or it could be an opportunity. And so, like, if you see here, it almost looks like you could put a dumpster beside the building and drop everything into the dumpster and let gravity help you. See what I mean? Like, you could actually, the building would be above the dumpster, and that would actually represent an opportunity to make the work easier instead of harder. So that's why I use that photo. Kelly and I did talk about historic preservation when I was here. There were some on St. Croix. There were some buildings that we looked at that were historic and being preserved, or at least someday being preserved. They were set aside and they were kind of deteriorating, but they were very old, very cool. And I thought, historic preservation people, we have a love-hate relationship. I don't know why, but it's a love-hate relationship with me and them. And I'm going, why? And they said, well, you tear buildings down. You tear old buildings down. And I'm like, yeah. But when I tear one old building down, it helps you fix up 5 other old buildings. So in my area, which is Washington State, we're not that old, are we? I mean, if you think about, like, the United States, Washington State is not very old as a state. So we don't have as many old buildings. But we do have some old buildings. And I went and looked at this one place where they have all these log cabins that they've moved them from this part of the state and this part and this part, and they brought them all into one place and kind of made a little town out of log cabins. And they're authentic. They're really old. They're not that old, but they're from like the 1880s or something like that. And they look great. They're really neat, to think of, like, that's how they built back then, because we have so many trees, Well, here's the thing. Those log cabins needed some repairs, because when they moved them in there, they needed to fix a couple things here and there. So what they do, they went to Home Depot and they bought new wood to put in the old log cabin, and it looks terrible. Okay, on tape, I'm telling you, historic preservation people, it looks terrible. It looks like you weren't even trying. And I'm like, hello, I'm over here with like 100,000 feet of old wood. I would have literally given it to them if I thought that it was going to look that bad, And so I would be like, so yes, we help with historic preservation, because Susan B. Anthony's house, everybody knows Susan B. Anthony's house is in New York State, and it had a fire earlier this year, and it damaged part of the house. And I think it's from 1864. But the thing is, we have wood from 1864. We actually do. I have a network, and I have my clients that I've trained all over North America, and I have 3 clients that are in New York State, and I know that one of them at least has wood from that era. And so, like, when they were repairing Susan B. Anthony's house, right? Not just a house, they could have put it back together using wood from the same era. Maybe even the same year. I mean, I'm not promising anything, but it is possible, right? So historic preservation, they should love us, but sometimes they hate us, because they hate everybody. They just want everything saved, and we do the best we can to help them do that. So, but what does that have to do with well, when you're assessing a building and it's a really old building, there may be limitations on what you're allowed to do there. You can't just go and knock down a historic building. And so remember, we're talking about assessing buildings right now. And that's one of the things that we have. There it often will be historic districts. And they might attach some requirements to that building. Like, you can't keep the wood. You have to donate the wood back to a historic preservation group or something like that, you know. And that could be something. Now, why do I bring this up specifically? Because if you're going to take down a historic building, the last thing you want to do is demolish it, you know? Because now you're not just demolishing materials, you're demolishing historic materials that could have been used to fix up the other historic buildings. So some of the bricks on St. Croix that are very, very unique and specific, if you could save them from this one building, and then that would fix up these other old buildings that have the same kind of brick, right? Because where are you going to get the brick like 250 years later? Where are you going to get something that matches that except from another building of that era? We've got the scope of work. So what you're paid to do. Remember, I found that out when I went to the site. I'm there assessing it, and I'm finding out, what am I getting paid to do? What am I getting paid? When am I getting paid? I might get some money up front, or I might get it all at the end. And what is the scope of work? So that means, what am I not getting paid to do? Changes. You know, what happens if there's a change? So that's when changes come in, though. It would have been like, that would have been a change order. It would have been like, hey, I'll absolutely clean up those 300 tires for you, and I'll do it tomorrow for this price, you know. But that's fair. That's fair. So the term, like, how long is it going to take me to do this job? That's a concern. Remember I said it? They're worried about how long it's going to take. And permits, you know, that's a problem for me, because a lot of times, you know, like getting a permit, there's a process, and you've got, I've got to fill out this form, then they give you another form, you got to come back, fill out another form, or whatever, and it's time that I don't have to screw around. So we usually let the general contractor deal with permits, or sometimes the building owner. And the contacts are listed here, as far as, like, I want to know who I'm working for, and I want to know how to get hold of them, where to send the invoice to, and things like that. What is their email, etc. And then also, finally, what do you do if there's a dispute? What do you do about those 300 tires? You know, like, what would you do if that had happened? Sometimes there's arbitrators, you know, that you can go to, and I have a feeling they would have sided with the contractor on that, because it would have been like, you didn't disclose that there were 300 tires because you didn't know there were 300 tires, and then you tried to make me clean them up, and it's like, that's completely unfair in my opinion. So, but here's the thing, you're assessing the site. What is your job? It's to remove the structure, and when I say remove, I mean like physically get it out of there. Like, you're not just taking it down and leaving a pile, you're removing it. So you have to get the materials out of there. And it's going to go different directions, right? You might haul some of it to the landfill. You might leave some of it for the owner to reuse in the new building. I love that option. It's called owner reuse. And it's where the owner is reusing their own stuff. I love that option, because it's the most sustainable thing you can do. And then you're going to try and research what kind of recycling options are there. And the islands, there aren't, it's not, you don't have a lot of great options from what I've found. Now the landfill here on St. Thomas, they take tires and they recycle them, and they take metal and they recycle it, and they have some hazardous material collection and things like that, so it doesn't get just thrown out, you know, and I love that. It's just that it didn't look like there were a lot of other options, like for recycling. And so it just makes reuse that much more important. The idea that if you can't recycle a lot of things here, then reuse becomes even more important. So, but how would you reuse something here in the islands? Like you say, okay, I saved those kitchen cabinets for reuse. Now what do I do with them? Do I bring them back to my house, or do I set them out in the rain, and hope somebody will take them for free? I don't know. So you have to have a plan, and we said one of the steps is to have a plan. Okay? And here's an example of that. And this is from Kelly's place. This is in the category of opportunity or challenge. So you've got these roof tiles, right? And let's go back before the hurricanes. And we'll say that these roof tiles are new. And somebody before the hurricane, you would say, oh, I need roofing. And let's say that this is really affordably priced, right? And you'd be like, I'm building this little shed, and I need roofing for it, and they've got roofing, and it's so much less than it would cost new that I'm going to buy that roofing. And then you go, okay, well, now it's after the hurricanes. And now everybody is really worried about the wind, and they're saying, do I really want this kind of roofing, that's just going to blow off? And will it blow off? I don't know. But maybe they think it's going to blow off because they're really worried about that now, And so, so it's like an opportunity and a challenge. It's like if you had a project that had all this roofing and you had an opportunity to save it, what is it really worth, and who's going to buy it? It could be that there will be tons of people that need it and want it and will pay you for it. Or it could be that it sits until you find the right person that's willing to do that. So, so we're on the fence about certain items. Like we don't know, we think they have value, but we're not really sure, and you don't know until you try. So what about site hazards? We talked about safety. And what about the hazards of like environmental hazards? So you're doing this kind of work, and especially after hurricane, like I said, it's some of the worst conditions you could be in. And you get into some of those buildings, and they've sat for a little while, and mold has set in, and now we've got an even worse situation, we're not trying. I want to make a point. We're not trying to save today. We're not trying to save every building, okay? We're trying to save one building, and then we're going to try and save the next building, okay? That's the thing is, I never let myself get so worked up about saving this building or saving that building, because I can't save all the buildings, There might be 100 buildings, and I can only do 10 of them. Do I have to feel bad that 90 of them are being demolished, or can I feel good about the 10 that were saved? You see? I feel good about what I saved, and I feel like next time I'll try to save 11, But if I have a building that's really dangerous or really bad, then I don't have to feel bad about that one being demolished, because there's 99 better buildings out there than that one. You may go look at a building, and it could be the worst building that needs to be demolished, and they still want you to save it, but it doesn't mean you have to save it. But what we have to do is be successful and be profitable and be able to continue to do this like I have been, and I'm in my 29th year. So if I had done a whole bunch of buildings like that, and I had just given up and decided not to do it anymore, there might still be 4,500 buildings that I didn't save, or 4,500 projects that I didn't work on. But you can have issues like oil, contaminated soil that often come from tanks. I don't know if you have that here or not. You have appliances with refrigerant like AC. I know you have that, where they have to be professionally decommissioned. And you might have fluorescent bulbs, and you have PCBs in certain materials, like light ballast, things like that. You have mercury. That's one of my personal pet peeves, is mercury. Like, people talk about lead-based paint, and they talk about asbestos, but they don't often talk about mercury. And mercury would be like in a thermostat. It would be in a thermometer, things like that. They have mercury in light switches and even things like that. So there are various things, and mercury is like one of the worst things that you can encounter in a building. It's most poisonous, especially around water. It's really bad to contaminate your water supply, things like that. So when I go look through a building, I do have some knowledge about hazardous materials, and I'm looking for them. I mean, because I don't want to have to deal with them. Remember my contract? I don't deal with hazardous stuff, and so I'm looking, and if I see a bunch of mercury thermostats, I'll say to them, like, we aren't allowed to dispose of these, and so we need to figure out what we're going to do with these and that kind of thing. So but we said lead, and we said asbestos, and we have mold. Now, we have a whole section on environmental hazards later, so I'm not going to spend time on it, but mold is definitely going to be a major concern. Animals and pests, we talked about termites. Structural damage that came from the hurricane. Damaged foundations. Everything's on a slope here, so you could have a lot of cracked foundations, which could be like just ready to half the building could be ready to fall down the slope. And well, disaster damage is one of the focuses here. So medical waste and household chemicals, those are things that we try to get people to take those things out of the building before we get there, but a lot of times they're not willing to do that. And I'll just say that, one example is we came across a meth house, a meth lab, and that's just like a non-starter for us. We don't even want to go. We don't even want to walk inside the building, in a meth lab, because they're just one of those things where you just walk away from that project, and but like if they left underneath this kitchen sink and in the garage, if they left all these cleaners and pesticides and things like that, well, we can pick them up, put them in a box, and hand them to the owner and say, here are your options for responsibly disposing these materials. Sometimes we'll help them with that.